Brent has been in the FinOps community for a number of years with us and at other companies, doing other related industries for a bunch of years, and has built some really great FinOps teams and continues to do that. So we wanted to hear Brent's story around how he's structuring his teams, how they work together, and how he's starting to look at some of those skill sets as he does that from his experience at Box and other places. So Brent, over to you.
Thanks to the FinOps Foundation for inviting me to speak on this topic today. I've been doing this role for a long time, even back to like colo versus cloud and application service provider hosting. So part of it is, as you see the salary data and all the practitioners that are getting certified, the professionals that are getting certified, it's becoming more and more expensive to run one of these programs. But there's a reason that they pay so well. There's a lot of accountability and responsibility for being a fiduciary owner of these millions of dollars of cloud spends at these companies, and being a trusted shared service bureau to all cloud consuming units, many departments that are having a lot of data. There's just a lot to do. Great. So part of it is understanding the role. And so when you're looking at a core program leadership role, like a director of FinOps or a program manager, the whole goal is to make sure that you have someone that's understanding all the different products and interactions with your consumers and customers of your data. So from finance to management to application owners to infrastructure partners, and then the FinOps core team members that are really in the trenches. When you look at the data lake and reporting engineers, pretty much every program is requiring from the tools that you see in the FinOps data. Everyone has their own tool. They have to custom map and make logic and taxonomies and tags. They got to make the data usable so that all these answers they're expecting out of this program can be customized and delivered with clarity and scope. So that's another type of role that is very important to make sure that the data interchange and the calculations and then the data being available and then in whatever user interface they're interacting with. And then the last type of role is analysts. So analysts or senior analysts, this is really where you have a lot of the run the business work. And so the goal is make sure that you identify where your program is at. If you're in crawl phase, you might have a bunch of analysts doing work. But as you get to walk or run phase, you know, we've kind of automated like SKU pricing analysis versus the bill. And so that was something an analyst would do in a crawl phase, but in a walk or run phase, that can be done with predictive modeling and comparison with data in a data lake with some delta reporting, and an anomaly report goes out. So every month it just runs. And with multiple cloud providers and, like you said, hundreds of thousands of rows in the bill, thousands and thousands of SKUs, that's the kind of work. So as you're thinking about your program, think a year ahead. What would it look like? And should I have a full-time engineer or should I have a contractor? And so as you see with some of the salaries are growing. And so us as leaders, we have to make sure that we're managing the P&L of the staffing of the program as well. And so that leads me into the next slide. So when we have some advice, seeing these programs from many different companies, having done this for about 8 different companies now, talking with a bunch of people, trying to figure out what advice would I give? Make sure that you align to the team and the tools that you already have today. The goal of that is you can do a gap analysis on what kind of program are you asking me to do? Who do I have today for tools and people? And then build a roles and responsibility matrix so that you start operating and you start delivering. The next is, I'm not going to be able to do that with these limited people and these skills. I'm going to need to acquire more people. So now what you've done is you have justification to spend more money on a tool or more people in order to get those objectives done and prove that the ones you have are too busy. It very quickly gets into, we have too much to do across all the domains. It's not just forecasting and budget alerts and spend commits. It's all the other domains that are in the FinOps program. Another one is make sure you're always convincing others to act. It doesn't matter how big your team is. You're always going to need to understand other folks' requests and business needs. And how are you going to get them to act? The whole goal is drive the behaviors that you want first. So get the right people. If you want to deliver these actions or deliverables or answers, and make sure that you're getting adoption so that people are using what you want to build. Is it making its progress towards the deliverable with the team you have, or do you need to maybe get a part-time person from a different team, or can you get higher priority and start bringing up value? And so that brings me to the next slide as well. When you start having a larger team, let's say you've got a few analysts, you've got some contractors, you've got some full-time, you're in the middle of a multi-year program, there are certain things where how are you going to keep all of them busy? So similar to what Kyndryl's slide brought up earlier in this presentation this morning, there's a lot going on. And so tactically, when you're doing, sprint planning or quarterly OKRs, what's really important to get done? And so loosely trying to give you guys something that, it's just an idea. If you take the FinOps domains as functional areas, and then you have a component, let's say like quantity unit forecasting. So it's at the SKU level by your capacity and your workload consumers. And then there's a very important technical decision that has to be made, meaning it's super important. It has high value. It's going to be around and it's got a lot of downstream things. It's technical. You're going to have to find someone that really knows taxonomy and SKU mappings and logic files and cost splitting. And they're going to have to get that validated by people to make sure it meets what the company needs so that you can get consensus, agree, and go build and operate. And so as you see in the priorities, it may not be a finance priority to do SKU level quantity forecasting. But when you look at budget management, which is financial top-down money, well, that's a very important finance priority, but the capacity team is working at a different layer. And so there's still a separate taxonomy and mapping file that has to be built to pivot that dollar value so that they can tie back to each other. And so you can see the designer and the validators, there's a couple overlap, but they're different. And so when you're scheduling a quarter with these teams, how do you know what you need? And how do you identify if you don't have enough of those type of people? Or you may think it's a priority, or maybe you have a new employee. Who do they go to if they want to debate or enhance the design? And so it acts like an air traffic control system of who knows what who's doing. There's a lot of finger pointing going, no, I thought you did that. Oh, well, I didn't know who ran that. And so it kind of helps avoid all of this, who's doing what, and prioritize where we're at and make sure everyone knows what's a priority for that quarter. And if not, you might have to push it to the next quarter or re-engineer it. So that's just some of the items that I wanted to share with you on how I think about organizing a large team, and then it helps to justify the staff and the priorities to make sure the business is getting what they want in that quarter. Next slide, please. So important technical decisions, you got to make sure they're done by a domain expert. If you're the domain expert and you're practicing up, great. You still got to get it validated. Make sure that you can move forward quickly. You want to be able to design and get consensus to move forward on these very important upstream things, because everything flows down in analytics and filters and groups and alerts by tags and data models. So it's very important to get those iterated and updated as the companies mature. And another one is make sure you're planning like maybe 1 year ahead or 18 months ahead. Do I really want to bring in a full-time analyst that maybe we're going to code out? Or maybe that should not be a manual analyst work. And so the other one is being able to align with the budget and the savings and run it like your own company. And so that brings me to the last slide here, which is think like a business owner. Imagine it was your own money and your own goals, and you run it like a mini P&L inside the enterprise. How would you pay for the tools and the people and make sure you're delivering a huge ROI on savings, value, all the unit economics, the environmental benefits, right? So typically, from my opinion, my goal is not to have a large team. I want to have the right team, and I want to be looking at how do we automate and interact with these groups for self-service, right? So how do we get them to be adopting the FinOps culture in their models or in their architecture patterns or in the CI/CD pipeline, where you're working together and financially aware DevOps is the end goal. And so what behavior will you drive to say we are financially aware DevOps? They know what line of code produces costs. They have these optimizations. They have these guardrails we've already put in invisibly for them. And how would you staff that program to achieve those end goals? And so we'll have another breakout session after this main presentation. So I'll hop in there. There's so much more to talk about, but thank you for having me speak on this today.
Hey, thanks, Brent. I know it's all stressful when the tech issues happen, so appreciate you coming right back in and making it happen so well. It's funny, people shouldn't get excited about responsibility matrices, but I think it's such a big part of FinOps, right? Which is figuring out who's doing what. And I think that type of work is really important, right, for us to put out there. And I think you hit exactly the right thing, which is all of this is about driving behavior at the end of the day by various teams, and you need the right, structure to do that. JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.